Speakers. We have also a representative, Mr. Aaron Frankel from Siemens. I think that will be it. 5 of us? Yeah. And Mouse, if he's...
I don't see Mouse.
Is he still here? There he is. So we can all get up here and field some, excuse me, and field some questions from the audience.
Like I said, time to have some fun. So throw out the funny, funky, whatever questions. Break it up in the audience a little bit.
All right. Okay, we got one back
We'll
here.
get you next.
When am I going to be able to digitally print a electric motorcycle that's pretty badass?
We could print that chassis tomorrow. Not a problem overall. Thing about digital or electric motorcycles, I think we're one rev of battery tech away for actually choosing it as a form factor. I personally still like explosion between my legs with gas, but I think solid state or some advanced battery technology is really going to be a huge leap forward for motorcycles. They don't have the luxury of sort of having that unsprung weight down below like the car skateboard platforms do. So you naturally have to sort of get it up high, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah, on the digital twin, fascinating overview, by the way. What about mission-critical parts like aircraft parts and stuff like that? Do you see that where safety is sort of a critical element? How far away are we from seeing that?
Okay, I think I'll take a shot at that. Being from the aerospace industry, if you go back far enough, I would say that if you took a look at two of the major commercial aircraft producers today, Boeing and Airbus, they're well on their way. Right now, the A350 for Airbus probably has over 1,500 printed parts already. Boeing has put forth a request for patents for an entire family of printed parts that will be a part of the airplane. Now, what we're talking about here is we're talking about basic structure. For example, when Boeing built a composite airplane, the 787, they changed their manufacturing processes radically. They built the entire fuselage out of composite material on large mandrels that rotated with CNC-controlled tape heads and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of conventional processes in there, but they changed the tooling and the process radically to do this. What you're seeing now is a lot of the smaller parts. And if you want to talk about critical parts, the jet engine guys are printing a whole family of parts, everything from injector nozzles to they're printing turbine blades. So I don't think you could probably get much more critical in an assembly or a part than a jet engine, than a turbine blade. But it's when I said in my presentation that the additive has become mainstream, I meant that. It's here. It's being incorporated at a rapid rate, and one of the major reasons is simply because the actual functionality of the parts are better. And I'll give you an anecdotal to that. A large titanium trunnion fitting for a landing gear, I think most people would consider that to be a fairly significantly critical part of the airplane. Airbus, Boeing, and others produce these by milling out in a long process. Traditionally, mill titanium out from a forging. It's a long process. It involves a lot of steps in terms of heat treating and milling and remilling and so forth. And it's a very expensive part. Both companies embarked on a prototype or a project where they were going to print. They wanted to look into printing these titanium-based trunnion fittings. They were using an electron beam or laser beam deposition process, where they put down micron thick layers of titanium. And they could use exotic alloys in the titanium powder to do this. But the bottom line is, when they got all through, when they produce a milled titanium landing gear trunnion, it goes through a whole range of testing. It has X-ray tests, has grain metal testing, it has all kinds of stress testing for the integrity of the part. They did the same battery of tests against the printed part, and they found out that the actual structural integrity of the printed part was far superior to the milled part, because they couldn't control things like when they actually got the raw forging and so forth, and all the different structural defects within the metal itself. So I guess to answer your question is, we're seeing a vast improvement by using printed parts today across all areas of manufacturing.
I got to hit on this a little bit because I'm pretty proud of my CTO at Hackrod. To back up what we just heard, so our CTO was the youngest technical fellow at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works history and space systems. His last big insertion at Lockheed Martin Space was the 5-foot diameter titanium propellant tanks for their $1 billion defense satellite system. So he used multi-robotic electron beam titanium, printed a 5-foot diameter propellant tank that was the most fracture critical part on that $1 billion vessel, certified for space at NASA regs, and took 50% out of the cost and 80% out of the schedule of that article. And now it's validated baseline at Lockheed Martin Space. So it's moving fast.
I might just add, and also the oil and gas, the exploration and the production area, they're printing on site when they have a very expensive and complex drilling bit that works in a rotary process of diamonds and carbide types of materials and so forth, and they ruin one, or one gets destroyed or whatever on the site. They are actually printing those on site now as a cluster, and because these are very complex parts, and they might have a lead time on these things of 6 months, and they can do this in a matter of days or weeks, but for a very short period of time, and not interrupt the actual production schedule of their extraction process.
Just one more quick question on. I mean, I'm from Silicon Valley and from a security company. With this transformation and the whole digital twin and the whole transformation in general, how people ship product, isn't there going to be mischievous hacking, reverse engineering of that IP downstream? We're already seeing a lot of our IP get stolen. I'll be frank, and we've got lots of instances, facts around that all over the world. I'm not pointing fingers, but how does the panel feel that gets transformed or addressed longer term?
I'm Aaron Frankel from Siemens PLM Software. Great question. We're seeing a lot of interest in this topic, and there's a lot of work going on in this space, especially related to manufacturing digital rights management. And along these lines, what we're seeing are a number of technologies emerge that will allow us to take our IP in our CAD systems or our digital manufacturing systems and put them into encrypted containers, where the keys that unlock those encrypted containers will reside on the controls of the machines that are going to execute the instructions. So we will be able to start to see the shipment of goods in a digital fashion to different places on the planet where those packages will be executed. We will be able to have business rules applied to those packages that will specify things like what machine is allowed to execute the job, what kind of materials need to be on the machines, what level of firmware would need to be on that machine. Collect the information while the machine is executing, package it back up. As it's executing, there'll be rules around the number of parts that can be produced, and then we'll be able to track that information so we'll have a record of it. We might even see these records being attached to the blockchain, for example, so that we can see exactly what's happened in that file. And then once we've printed the number we've specified or produced the number we specified, we won't be able to open that file again unless somebody comes back and asks for more access.
Hello, I'm Colton Bond from Savannah River Nuclear Solutions. In regards to that question, piggybacking on it, I know they have digital scanners, and you can purchase them at Best Buy. And I know there's no large-scale one, but in the realm of protecting your IP, what's stopping someone from generating a large digital scanner and then recreating the file? Because you can't protect a physical entity.
There actually is large format scanners. Company, I won't name them right now, is using an X-ray, neutron beam X-ray, and it's actually scanning the entire complete car down to every single fabric of it, but it's seeing through every layer, and then they're auto extracting and completely ripping the digital twin all the way through. Right now that process is manual reassemble. It takes hundreds of people to repackage it back together, but they're writing algorithms for it. They're going to automate that process. So I think to tie your two together, it's going to also be the Wild West for reverse engineering and ripping existing systems with scanning technology. And that's an open, fantastic question that does not have an answer yet on how that's going to be regulated. And I mean, I guess we could look to music, but it's a lot more complex than that. Unless you want to hit that.
So I'll add something to that, which is coming originally from the, well, you can't hear me, there we go. This is a very traditional like PR thing. I feel like we did something wrong and we're having to answer for it. But no, this isn't new, right? The words we're applying around it is new, but if you go to Detroit, there's warehouses full of competitors' cars. So the idea of tearing down cars, or we won't say stealing, let's say borrowing IP, is not a new thing, right? Humankind has been doing bad things since recorded history. The challenge is the velocity of which they can do it. The problem was you couldn't copy someone else's vehicle until they started selling it, because you had to go to the dealer, you had to buy one under a different name, take it to the teardown lab, tear it down, have very expensive engineers look at it, and then go from there. The challenge is now is the tools are out there where that's a lot faster, so now you can go to an auto show, scan a car, and then work on it. I think there's a lot of Wild West going on, but I also don't think it's a unique or new problem. It's one that we've dealt with in the past as an industry, and I think we'll continue to have unique solutions come out that will solve the problem.
The military is notorious for this, as you well know.
We have a question we ask internally: did I buy the pile or the file? So if I go buy a Mustang, right, I buy the pile at Adams. They didn't give me the file in the glove box, the CAD and the FEA. But if I rip it, didn't I buy the car? There's absolutely no legislation in place, so it's going to be fun to watch it unfold.
So, hey, my name's Devin Ketter-Manson. I'm from Devin Energy. I'm here kind of out of a passion for automotive. I'm upstream oil and gas, so nothing related to this. In terms of the whole citizen building their own car in their own garage, coming from a guy that sloppily welds things together and zip ties things together, when I start to put that badge on the car, how do you foresee the regulatory environment unfolding in terms of, here's a car that's designed through like a citizen development system, but it's backed by a company somehow who takes responsibility for safety?
You're the one 3D printing cars.
I think the really fun, interesting question to look at is going to be validating the power of the digital twin against physical artifacts. So the technology exists with our colleagues here at Siemens, definitely, that we're able to use simulation all the way into crash right now to actually look at what's going to happen in that digital twin. when that gets correlated back and validated versus the printed artifacts overall, we're going to get to a point where digital twin is going to be extremely accurate. And hopefully then on a regulatory side, we open up entrepreneurship here and we actually embrace and believe in these technologies. Because one of the barriers to entry to any group of young entrepreneurs to get into large automotive is going to be validation and crash. I mean, the amount of just physical dollars that are going to go into that is almost a huge barrier of entry. So I hope that we can get past, with proven new technologies, those regulatory barriers. On a nuance level, there are low volume regulations, and if you assemble your car, you don't have to have the same standards as the OEM on low volume. And in case of our model, we hope hundreds of companies are born this way. You know, we're not a car company, we're a digital industrial manufacturing company, and where you could actually start your own brand and assemble it. But I think the big question is how far away are we of accepted digital tools for regulation?
I just might add to that, the very technology that's being used, the very advanced simulation, the testing that's out there, will obviously be available to the same regulatory bodies. That would be the advantage. And going back to the old days where you'd have to go through a very long range, a process, I should say, of destructive testing, which is what basically all these regulatory bodies base their basic research and the regulations and so on in the first place. As we've moved into these more advanced simulation platforms, where we're basically determining the viability and the validity of the design part in simulation before we ever even get to a prototype. The same regulatory bodies are going to have that same information, and it should actually, in my opinion, make the process even easier.
Something I'll add too that's pretty cool. Is it just, can you hear me this way? Is this good enough? I feel weird moving this over. Okay. There's really cool technologies right now that exist. I'll take off the one hat and put on the other hat now, that exist where we're actually feeding sensors back into the simulation. So it's adding that layer of trust to the simulation where, you know, so what holds us back from just digitally simulating airplanes and then the FAA saying they're good? Well, it's because our simulations aren't good enough. And so they need to fly it and either prove out and oftentimes get close, but prove out, well, we kind of missed it here or there, let's fix it, right? That's why you get airworthiness reports and Boeing says, whoops, messed that up, please fix your planes. But as you have that IoT feedback loop where now you say, I made, right? So I simulated the car, I printed the car, now I put sensors on the car, and I feed that sensor data back into my simulation software. Now you're further validating the simulation. And I think that's where you're gonna see acceleration of that adoption, because now you're gonna have that improved model where we can start collectively agreeing that that model's good enough. The simulations are awesome today. They're better than they've ever been, but they're not perfect. And that's why we still have a lot of these physical testing regulations out there. And so as we can reverse the digital twin, right? So going digital to physical, as we can go physical back to digital, we can improve those simulations.
Just think what the future might be when with the going forward with material science, we're on the cusp of actually developing materials that will be adaptive and self-healing. And so when they undergo an impact or some type of physical stress or whatever, they can actually adapt and change to the situation. And we're not quite there yet, but there's a lot of research going on in that space.
Yes, my name is Larry Tabor. I'm with Quartic AI. I've got about 40-some years in the pharma industry and in other areas of healthcare and specialty chemicals manufacture. Thank you for that lead-in. It's kind of to my question that I've been wanting to ask each of you. As you think beyond your particular industry and you think maybe jumping across to, say, pharma or other areas where we can have the combination of both physical and digital and biological systems, what do you see in terms of the next big steps? So if there was a the equivalent of, hack farm, what would it look like to you? Just giving you that last interesting question for the day.
Yeah, so I'll speak very specifically to biomedical, which is highly regulated. So I think the next step might actually be in manufacturing, and that's where the digital twin and these IoT technologies are going to shine as the next step. So in highly regulated industries, like biomedical is a great example of this, what's one of your major barriers of innovation or manufacturing innovation? It's the regulation and compliance around the processes, right? So if you've been in the industry for 30 years, you know, once you certify a process, don't touch it because the FDA is going to come after you. Just down to you wear white socks every day. Yes, the process says white socks, you brought in red socks, go home. I think that's where we're going to see the next step of evolution is more going to be the manufacturing side. That's just my personal opinion, because now if you can move away from these paper-based validated processes and you can real-time data collect all your processes, you can go to the FDA and say, wearing red socks didn't affect any part of this process, and here's the data to prove it. So therefore, I can innovate by wearing red socks instead of white socks today, and then you're going to expand that to how you produce these implants, these medicines. And so I think that's an area that maybe isn't getting talked about a lot. We tend to think of the cool whiz-bang things, which is I'm going to have a robot for a leg or something like that, which of course is amazing, and we're going to have that too. But I think as a near-term, impact to the industry, it's going to be helping with the regulations and the compliance issues.
Fascinating question. I think, I hope, at some point in the near future, the convergence of these technologies related to biology and pharma will allow us to connect different types of sensors to our bodies, and then be able to collect and analyze that information and begin to offer up diagnosis to observations that will give us better insights into what the problems are, and hopefully more prescribed approaches to being able to resolve those issues. And I think we're beginning to see some of these today. I think there's some really interesting startup companies in this space like Second Day, where you're able to send in a sample of your poop and they'll prescribe a diet for you that, based on analyzing the different bacteria that are in your body, suggest what types of foods and things that you should be eating in order to lead a more healthy life. And the number of people colleagues that have tried to do this are telling me that it's really helping. The challenge is sticking to the diet. But I think that I think it's going to be a really interesting time here in the next 5 years as we start to collect more data and learn from it.
Bear in mind that I focused on material science and designing new materials based at the molecular and the quantum level. The same company that offers these kinds of simulations really started in the pharmaceutical space, and this type of simulation at a molecular and atomic level was for compounding new drugs. And instead of going through thousands and thousands of trials and error of compounding things together, they just go in and say, let's just simulate this stuff down at the molecular level and just see what really happens. So they're already doing this, and this is what this was predicated on. In terms of moving to taking that one step further, as I said before, I just quickly mentioned, I said we're already printing body parts based on actual biological structures and so forth that they can use. So that they can be, based on the donor, or if that would be the case, whatever. But the point being is that in terms of simulation, and I think the sky's the limit on this. This can be applied to so many different things, from biology to physical sciences and chemistry and so forth that I just mentioned. And I think it's going forward, the new manufacturing is not going to be just automation and robotics and everything that everybody's talking about and everything we're going to replace the workers. No, we need a whole new skill set. We need a whole new set of research, and we need a whole new set of workers that are going to be doing things a heck of a lot differently. A huge amount of opportunity here.
Okay.
Can she just ask her question?
More
Okay.
quick question.
I'm Lo Cameron. I'm from Paul Corporation. I'm also in the biopharmaceutical space. And what we see is the FDA is, of course, a huge force in our industry, but a little bit we do it to ourselves. The FDA has been pushing everyone, innovate, bring more analytics into your process. We want to see more of this, and it's almost us that's afraid. And I'm sure you see that in your industries as well, because disruptive technologies break things before they make them better. And I just wanted to know what advice you would give to limit the disruptive part and allow you to move more quickly to the advantages, especially in a very conservative industry like the biopharmaceutical space.
So what we found worked really well in automotive is very much has lots of regulations, not like the FDA, but it's the same thing, right? You know, this morning they said, hey, first use digital, and then just stopped. So automotive is very conservative when you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars per minute in downtime. So they're like, don't touch it. What we found is that you start small and then ideate and slowly grow out from that. Don't lose, and when I say slowly grow out from that, I don't mean in speed of innovation. I mean in who you bring into the table. So find something like you saw today. Find one machine and a small group. So in pharma, it may be find, you know, one packaging process. Start there where it's the least bad to break it. Get people excited there, and then scale one step up and bring in one or two more champions from different departments. And those, you're basically creating step by step your own team of people to go out into the organization and say, this is great, right? Why do we all have iPhones? Because a couple people had BlackBerries and they were like, this is awesome, I can do my emails. Now we all hate it because we do our emails all the time, but right? And then someone else wanted it, and then we all wanted it. It's the same idea. So find a couple, your innovators that are innovators at heart and have them start and then grow out and adding people step by step in your organization.
Okay, let's get
One more comment. You could work under the mantra, you know, disrupt yourself or someone else will disrupt you. And experiment. And experiment and fail and continue to experiment. And we're seeing this work quite effectively for many of our organizations where we are starting numerous experiments. We're investing in small pizza teams who are working on these together, and many of these innovations are then catching the attention of management and business people and turning into great opportunities for us.
I just might conclude with one just comment. The old saying that necessity is the mother of invention has probably never been so much enforced as it is today. Thanks.